You open your worm bin one morning and something feels off. The bedding is disturbed. You look closer, and there they are, dozens of worms crawling up the smooth plastic walls, trying to escape. It is a messy situation, but they are not trying to explore, and they aren't bored. In the wild, worms live in moist, dark, stable soil. When they start climbing the walls of your bin, they are reacting to an environment that no longer feels like home. It feels dangerous. The good news is that we can figure out exactly what is causing that danger. We are going to walk through a 5-step diagnostic checklist to identify the specific stressor in your bin and stop the escape completely. Before we start the checklist, gather 3 items. You will need dry shredded paper, a spray bottle filled with water, and a handful of crushed eggshells. Shifting your focus from the worm's behavior to the bin's environment allows you to handle these escapes systematically. Step 1 is checking for new bin syndrome. If you set up your compost system within the last 48 hours, your worms are naturally adjusting to a completely foreign environment. Their immediate instinct is to explore the boundaries and try to flee. To counter this, look at this comparison graphic. Simply leave the lid off and shine a bright desk lamp directly onto the bedding. Worms avoid light, so the constant glare forces them to burrow down and settle into the organic material. If your bin has been established for a while and they are still escaping, we move to step 2. The squeeze test. We are testing for moisture imbalance, which is the leading cause of bin failure. This diagram shows what happens when a bin gets waterlogged. The excess water physically displaces the oxygen, turning the environment anaerobic. Without oxygen, the rotting material creates toxic gases like ammonia and hydrogen sulfide. To a worm, that is like breathing poison. To find out if your moisture levels are safe, grab a handful of bedding and squeeze it. These first 2 panels show the failure states. If water pours out heavily, your bin is drowning. If the material feels dusty and crumbles in your hand, your worms are drying out, preventing them from breathing through their skin. Now look at the 3rd panel that just appeared. If you squeeze the bedding, only a few drops should come out, like a wrung-out sponge. If your bin is too wet, do not leave the lid off to dry it out, as that invites pests. Instead, mix in your dry shredded paper to absorb the excess. If it is too dry, use your spray bottle to lightly mist the surface. When moisture is balanced, the bedding remains aerobic and breathable. If it isn't, the environment quickly becomes toxic. Step 3 is the fluff check. Over time, the bedding at the very bottom of the container compresses under its own weight, sealing off the lower levels from the air above. To fix this, reach down to the bottom layers of the bin and gently turn the material over. Fluffing the bedding breaks up dense sludge and manually reopens the pathways that allow oxygen to circulate deeply into the container. Now that oxygen is flowing, we move to step 4, the feeding and pH audit. When worms start escaping, a common beginner mistake is adding extra food to try and distract them, but luring them back down with more food actually accelerates the problem. Look at this cross-section diagram detailing the proper feeding zone. When you overfeed, the excess scraps rot faster than the worms can consume them. That decomposition process generates dangerous heat and strong odors. Feed in small amounts and always bury the scraps completely under a thick layer of bedding to suppress smells and stabilize the environment. You also need to audit what kind of food you placed in that zone. Scraps like citrus peels, raw chopped onions, and leftover spicy foods drop the pH of the bin. When the environment becomes too acidic, the worms experience painful chemical irritation directly on their skin. If you spot large amounts of acidic foods in the bin, pull them out. Then take your crushed eggshells and sprinkle them generously across the top of the bedding. The eggshells act as a natural buffer, neutralizing the acid and bringing the pH back to a comfortable level. By strictly controlling how much food enters the bin and maintaining clear airways for oxygen, you stop the material from rotting. The pile returns to a stable, breathable ecosystem. Finally, we reach step 5, the placement check. We have evaluated everything inside the container, so now we need to look at the room where the bin actually lives. This graphic outlines the strict thermal parameters worms require. The green highlighted area shows their ideal range, between 15 and 25 degrees Celsius. If the temperature hits the pulsing red zones above or below that band, worms become stressed, triggering an immediate mass exit. Look around the room. Ensure the bin is not sitting directly in a patch of harsh window sunlight, and check that it hasn't been placed next to a heating vent or an uninsulated exterior wall. pick the bin up and physically relocate it. You need a space that remains shaded and temperature stable throughout the entire day, whether that is a dark indoor closet or a deeply protected outdoor corner. The plastic walls of your bin offer very little insulation. Shielding the outer container from the swings of the climate in your house or yard is the only way to ensure the internal microclimate stays safe. Following these steps results in dark, crumbly compost, where the worms stay buried in the bedding and escape attempts stop. Over the next 24 hours, keep an eye on the container. Watch the edges and the lid to verify that the environmental adjustments have fully stabilized the ecosystem and the worms have settled. Escaping worms are pointing to a specific, correctable flaw in their habitat. When you stop reacting to their movement and instead fix the environment they live in, the behavior resolves itself. If your worms are finally settling in, consider subscribing for more practical composting guides. And to ensure you never have to troubleshoot a poorly designed container again, click the video on screen now. We will walk through exactly how to build a fail-proof worm bin from scratch.